to Poetry Swap. I'm here with my brother Mike, aka MadMystic. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing very good. Very happy to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So one of the things that we have in common is we both write longer poems. I tend to uh it's weird because I sometimes feel like I'm imposing, but at the same time I think we all, and I'm a little bit jealous of the people who can be that
Yeah.
specific. I'm just not that guy.
Oh, me neither. Me neither. I always feel like in every app I've ever been on that I'm limited all the time. I always run out of space, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. And I have when I post poems on Threads, which is the primary place now where I'm posting my stuff. The things that I'm posting are all things that I've written specifically for Threads. Right? It's not. I'm not uh, because I'm trying to be as mindful and intentional
yeah.
of the word count. So there's something cool about that, right?
Yes.
It then becomes a device or a prompt structure,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
write, tell a complete story
This much space.
in this much space. So I think that's dope. Like I appreciate it, but when I think I'm at my best, um and other people may disagree, but when I think I'm at my best is when I allow myself to kind of sit in the world for a little while and 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 tell a longer story, sometimes not knowing necessarily where the story will end, but just allowing the pen to kind of do its thing. um and so with that, I'm excited for you to read your piece. Tell me a little bit about your piece. And
Oh, yeah, no worries. It's well, much like you were saying, I go that same process of writing longer pieces sometimes because I feel like as it's coming out, I know when it's feeling close to finished or when it's not. And some of them, if I have to cut them short, and then I would, but it would be to fit the box, so to speak.
right.
These are ones, though. This is a few years back I'd written this, and I was looking at the concept of being a father and what's the perspective of my sons, and then trying to view it from their perspective. How can that, how can I maybe improve mine or better mine in that way? But it
Mm,
was also still going through certain things and thoughts. You still have the hurt and the healing journey that you're always going through to some extent, but I'm in a better spot now, but back then it wasn't. So this one, I remember reading it or writing it and like, oh yeah, it had some resonance to me, even in rereading it again. You start to remember those emotions. So that's what this one is. And
cool.
I'm going to start now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thoughts on the perspective of my sons. I am Papa. From the moment of their birth and from conception for me, I see them through my eyes. But here and now must give greater focus to what they see, especially in viewing me. The visual moments, these cues, are the memories created and acted upon. In imitation, emulation, and simply in learning of something they have not seen before. From their specific thoughts to their subconscious interpretations. It is an influence derived from observing one man, their Papa. It is profound, the true dawning of this realization. It has been known before, first in principle, then in concept. With introspection and reflection, my understanding grew towards it, towards its impact, especially the example being set, the actions being displayed, the relevance or irrelevance of all I did and do. I comprehended the responsibility and the gravity of upholding it, a sacred duty and obligation. Ironically, for a man who felt the pain and anguish of such things being destroyed around him, yet there was no doubt in respect to his sons, his blood legacy. He would not falter. His means and methods were sure to be obscure at times, not the ordinary or the accepted common norms of society. Yet even in that, and still today, it was not judged and condemned, even in the fact that it was seldom understood. Not until the goal was reached or the problem solved. Sometimes, even then, the accomplishments were accepted and valued. All involved risk beyond the norm of acceptance. In this, though, it was accepted if I was taking the risk. The anxiousness of discomfort brought about in recognition of risk dissipated when they saw I was at the forefront in handling these situations. Their comfort was not from a lack of care or concern, it was from a sentiment and feeling, subconscious awareness of that capability, as well as an innate sense and recognition that the negative emotions and feelings they were experiencing were not having anywhere near the same effect on me. I was calm, or at least calmer in disposition. Unlike many others, I chose proactively to not let my emotions run rampant in typical behavioral patterning. I brought forth and kept at the helmet my pragmatism, knowing this aspect of mind was the only one capable and willing to captain this ship. On whatever turbulent waters lay ahead, set sail and discover, venture into the vast unknown, a blessing of the nature of my being, a curse of the nature of my humanity, a consistent battle of conscience, ever raging in mind. Moments where peace prevails, but conflict between reactive and proactive reasoning take hold and possess many of these moments. That linked together as the history of my life and forge onward in the ever being presence. My story is written by my actions and reactions. Good moments, great moments, bad moments, and dark moments, everything in between. So it comes to full appreciation of this one question. What moments do you want to be had in your life and made going forward? What do you want your sons to see from your perspective of you? Interesting queries indeed. Answering these questions means accepting a specific truth and believing it wholeheartedly. I am in control of what moments I want to have and what moments I want to make. I am in control. More so deliberately, I am their creator. I reflect and genuinely peruse through memories. There is good, there is bad. Examination of these is needed, broadly listed and necessarily stated in this script. The good, a true care and love for my sons that I confidently say has no bounds. I show them love and care. I show them the value of their humanity, the acceptance of their strengths and weaknesses, their uniqueness, the importance of family, and the need to sustain and nurture it, even through frustration and anger. I show them that it's all right to make mistakes and fail, but it is not all right to leave it at that. They must continue and move on, find a path to success, or find useful knowledge in a quest that needed to be abandoned. I showed them the importance of respect for self in their individuality and their specific strengths. They do not need to follow my path, especially in seeing and knowing that is not something true to them. I showed them the need to learn and acquire knowledge, even in subjects that are not one of their interests. I showed them that it is not always easy, but if effort is made, it can be worthwhile. I show them that there is more beyond the norms of society, that they are not limited if they choose to go further and beyond. I showed them the need to respect others, to act in a way and manner that brings positive outcomes, or at the very least minimizes harm. I showed them how they should respect and appreciate their mother. I showed them ways to become men, men that continue to grow and find ways to better themselves. I showed them compassion. I showed them the need to communicate and listen, to understand choices and accept outcomes. I showed them they are in control of their lives, their feelings, their thoughts, and they can move beyond negativity if they choose to. I showed them there are ways to progress and improve any situation in life. I showed them life is hard and challenging at times. I showed them possibilities, to respect necessary and accessory, to see differences in both and the value of both. I showed them that courage and confidence in themselves is how they bring forth their greatness. I showed them their greatness, the need to express it and display it. I showed them the value of hard work, of sacrifice and perseverance. I showed them my pride in knowing they are fully capable of becoming better men than me, not set to deprecate self, only to acknowledge truth of the foundation I have set for them. I showed them why they are my pillars of truth. You know what? I'm going to stop it right there. There's more to it, but I think I'd share that part afterwards. I liked the way that one ended at that point, and I felt that
Okay.
was a good spot to keep it.
I like
And
it.
yeah, just felt the right moment. So I sure you get a vibe like that. It tells me trust your vibe.
For sure. For sure. And we don't that's an important part of the thing, right? Like I think sometimes we can sometimes because we have our own like our thing, right? The thing that we think, or even our pieces are especially once we release them into the world, whether it's on page or they are organic matter, and that
Yeah, yeah,
they should change and move. It's part of the reason why, even though I've written two books of poetry, and I for some reasons hate them both, right? um
to this day or no?
well, yeah, to this day. um but but I also love them both, and
That's
i
good.
i i have to recognize that both were written in a moment. Both were written the content in both were written not for publication,
Yeah,
right? Like that's not where they came from. And so they really more came from desperation, to be in some ways. And
yeah,
so to put on a parameter, uh like, it's just not fair to the piece.
mm,
um or fair to me as a writer to hate the content. um and sometimes I'm hating the content as much as I'm hating the writing, and I have to detach myself from both in
gotcha.
order for those pieces to live in a way that is detached from my kind of initial feeling, like
Yeah,
the emotions that are attached to it. It takes a while for those to separate from what, you know especially if you're kind of communicating them publicly. So,
certainly.
but really, what I have to remember is that these are just moments in time, right? Kind of
Yes.
what you're saying. So it's not that they're wrong. I shouldn't hate them. That's just where I was.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was
And
looking at here actually with this. I see the next part, and it's one's called the good, one's called the bad.
yeah,
But I recognize that expressing up to that point that I did, it's like, well, that's what I want to express and put out forth now, is because I really am a firm believer. Like you try and put out something that's positive.
yeah,
And I'm looking at it now going, this is something I'd want to put out there in greater context, maybe on like YouTube or something where there's an explanation as to what that process was like. because I
Yeah.
do think that's an important thing too. I mean, regardless of anyone's opinion, I'm not worried about, like, saying reading it out, but in the moment I read it and going, I like where that is now. It feels like a good message towards what I'm indicating about me, like the process of being a father for my sons. And knowing I got to that point, I was like, that's good. I'm gonna keep it there for now.
Yeah.
You know.
Um, what is that a is it a piece that you would ever show your sons?
Yes, yeah. I wouldn't hesitate to show them. They're older now. The youngest is going on 18, so
Hmm.
they're men at this point. So I wouldn't have shown them years ago when they were young because they didn't have the emotional maturity to maybe process it. But now,
Right.
anytime if they had questions or we had a conversation, I wouldn't hesitate to show them. If I was putting it out in this forum, then I know there's a possibility they'd see it anyway. So I wouldn't do so without the forethought to say, they might see it anyhow. And I like to be open with them and just, express that to them. I go, yeah, these were the things I was going through. Sometimes
Yeah.
there's aspects of life that are difficult, and you have to own that. So,
Yeah. Do you have, how many sons do you have?
two boys, two
Yeah.
boys.
So I have two boys as well. And I think that and so when you were reading it, I was thinking about, I was listening to you, but also thinking about it in the context of the things that the things that I have yet to say to my sons,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like the unspoken things that I haven't quite figured out how to say, and I've got a lot to say to them. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and they're a little bit younger than yours, uh, uh, but and which is why there's just things that we haven't made peace with, but
Sure.
but and that's hard to do, right? Like
Very hard. Very hard.
but I also think like um I also think about it's hard to do, but I think about all of the ways in which I did not have that opportunity to reconcile my things with my father.
It's a
And
big proponent of it, isn't it? Like the relationship with your father, and then when you're a father yourself, right? So,
there's no doubt, right? And I
yeah,
and I and I know that there are people who planned intentionally to be fathers or mothers, and they thought about it hard, and they really like, I'm not that person.
yeah,
And I did not think I wanted to be a father, really. I had a bad father, I had a bad mother. I was like, that's not for me. And I wasn't like, I'm gonna destroy them, like I didn't have
yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of psychology, although I know some people do. I was just like, I that's just not what I need to have fulfillment,
yeah, yeah.
you know um and now that I have them, I and now that I have them, I am obsessed in thinking about them, even though I live in a place where I'm away from them. Um, I'm obsessed in thinking about them, and I'm obsessed with what I want to share with them
Yeah.
as young men, and 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 it's not necessary. And at this point, those things are bigger in scope, right? They're not,
Sure.
the day-to-day homework. It's like, how can I help you see the world?
Yeah.
And part of that is desiring to see me, and part of that is helping them to see the world at large so that they're
Sure.
prepared to function in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big part of it. I find is I found when they were younger, I was almost trying to be overly protective.
Mm,
In that sense. I was caught between the idea of trying to, okay, how do I be the disciplinarian, but then how do I still show them compassion and love at the same time? And always thinking on it, almost so much so that it was like you get caught up in your own thoughts and you're making plans or taking actions, but they're over thought of, or they don't go the way you expected or something like that. And then I reached a point where it was just like I said, okay, how about focus on how it feels right now? Like, what do you want to do? I want to spend time with them, or I want to communicate with them, or I want to somehow pass on some level of knowledge of that. But I wanted to do it in the sense of feeling. And I realized sometimes it was just, it was around them, and then there was times where I wasn't able to. There was, after I got divorced, there was a time separation at that point. So, and I felt it, and I could see that they felt it too, right? So it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, I got to make an effort now to make whatever time I got, the quality time as much as I can. It wasn't about the quantity of it. It was about when the opportunity is there, I want to do something. So even if it was writing a message, or like I'd post a poem on the fridge when they were younger, like, here, this is what you guys mean to me. Or I'd send them a little message sometimes just because I was thinking of them. And I said, well, what would stop me from contacting them right now? And I would push myself to say, I'm not going to stop myself. I'm going to do it, because I'd rather get that out than have it stuck in going, oh, I wish I sent it.
Yeah.
Right? And so
That's that's a really powerful thing for me to hear at this moment, and for me to remember that, you know, there is no one way to do it.
no.
And we sometimes make choices for ourselves that are rooted in this concept that there's one way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so anytime it looks a little different in any way, there's an opportunity for self-abuse if
Yes.
we're not
Yeah.
careful, and if we don't recognize that um that it can look and feel in a lot of different ways, that it doesn't have to be restrictive to um this or that,
Yeah.
or there is no
Or if,
finite choice, there's no binary choice.
yes.
It
Yeah,
can
that's what I
look
was
and
just going to say. A binary or a finite choice. It's not just right and wrong sometimes. Sometimes it's
no,
just, okay, I got to be there, or I got to do something regardless. Sometimes it's even making a mistake and having them see it and then coming back and explaining, yeah, I did make that mistake. I'm owning up to it now. Just now you're going to see what it is to apologize and make amends, or something along those lines. There's no sense of perfection. It's
yeah,
just progress, right?
right. And also accepting that these are not moments that we can sometimes make a problem worse than it would ever need to be, by simply choosing to ignore that we have choice in it, and that we have
Yeah.
perspective in it, right? And not to deal with it can metastasize it into something else that wouldn't have existed if we simply said, okay, we're going to wrap ourselves around it in this moment, even if it's messy,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if it's not exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
We're gonna lean into this specific moment, and then tomorrow lean in on a different moment,
Yeah. And
and
just
then the next
keep
day,
going.
yeah, just keep going. It is a hard thing. Is
Challenging,
the
very
thing that
challenging.
Yeah, but it's the thing that it's the thing that we all have to do. I mean, you have that line
Yes.
in a few lines in your piece that speak that speak to that, right? I show them that it's all right to make a mistake and fail, but it's not all right to leave it at that. And
Yeah.
they must continue to and move on, find a path. I I think
There's always
that
a sense of progress, of having to still step ahead. It's just like, I always view it from the sense of life and life value. It's like There's no sense of life value of going backwards and regressing. To just giving up and saying, okay, I'm going to lie down here and die. And not to make light of it, but just it's always said, like, what's the alternative? It's like, well, then I have to get up, no matter how challenging it is or how difficult it is, and find a way to step forward. I mean, you can be mired in a swamp of like just rot, and it might stink every time you move. But unless you move and get to a shore that's clear and wash it off you, you're going to be mired in that if you just stay stagnant. And it's like you gotta step forward. Like it's difficult, but it's needed.
Yeah, and there is, and if you're not careful, you could find yourself stuck for a really long time, right? Like if you're like, you think you blink and you're stuck for years or decades, or
Decades. Mm-hmm.
all because of um what we now know. That negative energy that paralyzes us. We know it to some extent that energy is irrational,
Yeah.
is uh and is not the truest indication of what's real.
Oh, it's all predicated on fear.
It's all predicated on fear. And the fearlessness in it is to be able to say, I feel that fear, I
Yep.
recognize that fear, and I'm going to push through anyway. And
Yeah.
writing is such a big part of that for me, because
Yep.
writing is very much connected for me to writing is very much connected to me from the perspective of fear,
Oh,
um,
definitely.
and challenging fear. I'm much better at challenging fear through writing than I am through speaking.
You know
Um,
what? That's your writing is really good. It's phenomenal. And I heard you speak the first time on the open mic, and there
yeah,
was like a natural flow, natural resonance to it. I found out too, right?
yeah,
It's interesting because you may feel like that's the way you were saying about the idea of years go by and that, and I'm like, yeah, I can relate. I mean, I used to like writing since I was a child. The first thought of spoken word when I was really young in the creative writing class, my voice quavered. I couldn't even get it out of me. It was just like so much anxiety. And then
yeah,
I always had in the back burner to do it. And here decades have went by. And it's only been this last year that I've actually done it. And it
yeah,
was like, oh, finally a completion to something I've wanted to do, or at least reaching that goal.
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
also looking at it and going, I don't look at it in the sense of where I'm at with it. I'm not concerned. It's doing it right now that's important. And hearing your words, having heard them before, and then I've read your writing, it's like, I don't see like a gap between them. I just see it's the same whole in some
yeah.
ways, right? And they're both a lot of presence there. So
Cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm going to read this piece called Heroin. You're my worst addiction. Been hooked on this affliction since the very first night. Been dreaming about you since the very first bite. The first time that I had that taste is the first time that I saw God's face. I'm trapped and I can't escape this pleasant wrapped in red cellophane. I want you deep inside my veins, because without you, I'd be insane. You help me tame the shame in my brain. Before I start to prep the works, my whole body twists and jerks, heads me, heals me from the worst, takes away my hurts, dark brown and sweet. How something so bad for me could sweep me off my feet, makes my skin crawl, climbing up the walls. You grab me in the halls of my stall and wrap me in your shawl. My whole body's a nuisance, powerless to your power. Got this room by the hour, a little H, a little flour, and that's all I need. And that's all I can afford before I get bored and need to score some more. I kind of like the routine, walking the streets, feeling incomplete until I get you in my bloodstream. You're my worst dream. And I've given everything away for your caramel curse. Well, too many of my friends ended up in a hearse. But when I see you, I don't rush the moment. I want to get the most of my money spent. Weed sets the chase. Henny is the table. Weed is the table. Honey is the chase. All of my problems get erased when I'm in your brown space. The spoon hits the ground. When I go tumbling down like I'm bathing in sunflowers while walking through sun showers, I know it's gonna last about an hour. Then I'll need to have it again because I'm addicted to you, my lover and my friend. Your liquid gets me drunk, but in a different way. I should run away, but you always make me stay. Plus, where the heck am I gonna go? I started out looking for a bitch, and now I'm the hoe. A speck of blood drips on the platter. Thanks to your love, I finally matter. All that dirt I did, all the people I harmed, none of that matters when I'm in your arms. And I dance and I sing and I feel like myself. You love me even though I have no wealth, a shelf of a man that I want to be. And you told me with you that I'd finally be free, but now I feel like I'm even deeper in captivity. But I do what I gotta do to stay true to you. Pimp, rob, and steal are all on the menu. Jacking fools against their will, skipping interventions for just another thrill. But I'm the one left paying the bill. I wake, confused with the shakes, feeling like all of this has been a big mistake. You left me again and you took my ride, though you said you would always be by my side. You want to keep me high on this bed. Secretly, you're trying to break me instead. But I walk the streets again looking for you, cold and alone, filled with regret, wondering what life would be like if we never met. The one thing that no one understands is how no one feels like you in my hands and in my veins. You make me insane. I always think I can maintain, but you make me feel like shit. And that's why I want to quit. But give it an hour, maybe two. I will miss you. I still love you. I'll fall to my knees or bend over with ease to have you inside me again, please. Because I will do whatever it takes, even though my heart aches. I've given my job, my kids, my wife, just to have you in my life, to be with you to the end, because you are my only friend. 'Cause falling in love feels just like heroin. Poem.
Mm-hmm. I gotta let that sink in, brother.
Mm,
I read that before when you sent it, and I just read it the one time because I said as much as I wanted to reread it, I wanted to hear it because I knew there
mm.
would be a whole different resonance to it. And yeah, it's hard to even express. It's just all feeling, even the way you expressed it. It's just such raw feeling with that. And you're talking about something that's so it's prevalent. There's a lot of people who've gone through that kind of suffering. I went through addiction before myself in different ways, and I get that semblance of feeling, regardless of what it was. It's just, that feeling that you're like something's pulling on you, something wants you there. I used to describe it like that poison, it was like inhaling that cigarette or whatever it was. It was just breathing it in, knowing that you're poisoning yourself. It was just that raw feeling. And as you're describing it, I was just, that's one of the blessings, I guess, of being able to listen to this or hear, be part of something like this, that community thing you're saying, right? Chance to kind of really resonate with other people's feelings in that regard. Something that it's as much as it's not new, it still feels new to me. I
Yeah.
haven't done it enough.
Yeah.
So
I thank you, and I think that is part. I mean, not part. I mean, that's why. We often, I think poets especially, but maybe writers in general. It. At least. Well, I shouldn't say that. For me, I tend to always think about my writing heroes in the past, right? I tend to connect and resonate with uh or when I think about what my
Mm.
influences are, they're
Yeah.
all historical influences, and that's only because I have not allowed myself to be in the company of in the community of other writers,
Mm.
right? Like I think there is something about what happens when you say when you are public about your voice,
Yeah.
and people react to it, even whether in a digital space or in a in an in-person space, that
Yeah.
there is something about the magic that can happen when you release it, right? And
Mm. Yeah.
maybe it's as simple as you get an endorphin hit to want to do it again. But every um you know, I went to there was a open mic here a couple of weeks ago, and it was the first time that I had read public poetry publicly, like in person. And every single one of those poets that were up there did something that I resonated with, said something that
Yeah.
I resonated with, right? Now, those are all experience. Did it make me a better writer? Maybe not. Maybe not. Did it give me things to think about? For sure.
Sure.
Did it inspire my writing? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's part of I think the magic of creating community is
Yeah.
in all of the different ways, right? Like I think we all we need it. We need to get those hits however we however whether it's in groups or in writing workshops or in
Yeah.
fellowship with
Yeah.
others. Like all of that is super duper important. And
Oh, very much so.
I don't I I don't I don't take it lightly that that people are able to be that vulnerable in a public space, whether the digital space or there's a
It's
lot to that.
just such an immense amount of courage, I'd say, that comes with that. Like you described it before, the idea of bringing yourself to a fearless point. It's never really fully fearless. It's building the courage to the point to overcome the fear, right?
Correct.
And it's just a big component of it. And for me, it was a big thing. Right now, I'm still learning the concepts of vulnerability. Like it was always the opposite for me. Put on the armor, just present a certain outward appearance, and then go at it like that. So the idea of reading words and doing this, and coming from like a trades background and saying, "Oh, you write poetry?" That doesn't seem to fit. If you see me during the day in fluorescent clothing and work boots on and stuff, you'd look and go, "It doesn't seem to fit what someone's image might be in mind." But I was like, you reach a point where you're going, it doesn't matter. It's like, what are you trying to express? What's in you to put out there to, have
Mhm.
that fellowship, that community. I always look at the wording of it and go, yeah, the community of it, like almost forming a sense of communion with those people when you're sitting there, either hearing the words or being able to express yours to them, knowing it's all accepted because everyone's putting themselves in that spot to be accepting of it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a privilege. So,
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a great privilege. Um,
yeah.
what's your if you have one, your writing goal? Um, like what are you working towards, if anything?
I've always had the idea to put out, publish a couple books, a couple of ideas towards books. I don't know if it'd be one, a series, or but I've never formalized it as much in the past. But I always knew I wanted to write uh, a few books. And when I was younger, I was always into fantasy novels. So I was always like the Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons type stuff, and always had these storylines in my mind that I still plan on putting out there. But poetry's always been the first one, so I'm working on it now. It's actually a little poetry book that I'm putting together based on poems I already have. It's like the content's there. I just putting it together and finding a way to figuring out what the best way to put it out is. Right now I'm looking at like Amazon, whatever their service is for that, or I'm going to see what other ones are there. And it's the premise of actually just getting it done at this point. Like I obviously you want to share it, but it's like I would just want to get it done and out. almost like there's my part. I finally got it out. Like you've done your expression, and then whatever comes comes. It's like not
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. It's not even a thought in my mind. It's like I just got to do my part in getting it out there right now. And then
Yeah.
I like the expressing part. I like speaking more now, so that's why I did the YouTube thing. Is just put some spoken word out there. But I've always been big on like different philosophies and a lot of the things I've looked on and read. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Emerald Tablets, anything that's esoteric, the agnostic stuff. I find it like fascinating, and there's so much of it now that people are discussing more in the sense of spirituality and just connection. And I've always had this one concept towards just humanity and the human condition that I feel like is the root and core of everything that we live. And the more we get in tune with that, I think the more you'll see things probably improve in life in general for the individual right through the society. Right? It's not easy to say, I guess, but hard to do. But
For
I
sure.
believe there's a
Yeah.
premise that's there for it.
Cool. How can people find your if people want to engage more with your work, what's the best way to do it?
Right now, I'm on Instagram and on Threads, and I have a YouTube channel. All of it's under MadMystic 50. So
Cool.
all the same name for all of them. I have a Twitter account too, but or X, sorry. I rarely use it though anymore, right? So I found
Sure.
Threads being the most prominent one, and then Instagram, and now YouTube. So
Cool. Well, I appreciate this time, brother. It's a pleasure to see you again and swap poetry
definitely.
with you, and best of luck in where the pen takes you.
Oh, much appreciated. Love hearing your work as well, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. It's another poetry swap. Peace out.